Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Carl Palmer. I'm the branch chief for the Safer Consumer Products Program at DTSC. This is a workshop and webinar to discuss our 2018 to 2020 draft priority product work plan. We have a pretty straightforward goal and agenda this morning. Our goal is to get input on our draft work plan. And after my opening comments, we're going to have a short presentation by Rob Brucia to go over the work plan, give you some insight in terms of what it is, what it isn't, and our thinking. After his presentation, we'll have time for public comment. With this event is being webcast on our webinar, and so we'll be soliciting input from the webinar. And if you're on the webinar, you can go to the chat function in the webinar and submit a question. If you're here in the room and you'd like to comment, I would ask that you fill out one of our commenter cards, which are available in the back of the room or from Diana Phelps here. You can fill it out and give it to Diana. We will allow public comment in order we receive these. We're going to, I think, have plenty of time for everyone to comment. We typically will limit your comment to 5 minutes, and I think that should be adequate. If there's a need and adequate time at the end, we'll have more time for people to add additional comments or to ask clarifying questions. So again, we're going to have plenty of time for folks' comment, and we're really looking forward to your input. I also want to stress that our comment period for the draft work plan is open through March 9th. I would encourage you to go to our CalSafer web portal on our website, and you could submit written comments there, and you can see everyone else's comments as well. So with that, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Rob Brucia, who has been the point person in putting this together with our team, and he's going to give us an overview of the draft work plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. As Carl said, my name is Rob Brucia. I'm a research scientist with the Safer Products and Workplaces Program, DTSC, and I am going to give you a brief overview of the work plan this morning. As Carl also said, we have a public comment period open on our CalSafer website. Later on in my presentation, I'll provide a link to where you can go to access that. The work plan, I think, has been on our website now for about 2 weeks, and we will be, again, accepting comments through CalSafer website through March 9th, as he indicated. Okay, just as a reminder, the Safer Consumer Product Regulations require DTSC to prepare a work plan every 3 years, and the work plan describes the product categories that DTSC intends to look at over the 3-year period covered by the plan. The work plan also explains our policy priorities that we relied upon in helping to select the product categories, and it gives a general explanation of how we decided on what categories to include. What it doesn't do is it doesn't name specific product chemical combinations. Any mention of a product within the work plan is strictly for illustrative purposes and not meant to imply that we've actually done any prioritization. The other thing that it doesn't do is create any legal obligations. It simply is a document that frames our decision-making for priority product selection. Our approach in preparing this work plan was to engage stakeholders. We held a public comment period last fall. We also actively sought input from various authoritative bodies, including state agencies, other boards, departments, and offices, Cal EPA, and so on. Another thing that we did was we developed some program goals. We used our discretion to set some program goals and then to develop some supporting policy statements to help us achieve those goals. And then finally, we also looked at the work we had done on our previous work plan. So as I just mentioned, we used our discretion to set some policy goals, and they're shown, excuse me, in this slide in colored in green. They were to protect children, to protect limited water resources and our aquatic ecosystems, to address chemicals that may impact the indoor environment, and to address chemicals that may migrate from food packaging into foods. We then after establishing those goals, developed the policy statements that you see here on this slide. These are all discussed in more detail in the work plan. And all of the product categories that we are proposing for this new work plan are supported by these policy statements. Okay. So as another reminder, these are the product categories that were included in our 2015-2017 work plan. We propose keeping many of these product categories in the new work plan, but we also propose dropping a couple. They are fishing and angling equipment and clothing. In the case of angling equipment, we believe that the scientific evidence regarding potential environmental impacts is compelling, but given our limited resources right now, we think that this is, or we think that there are other higher priorities that we would like to focus on. In terms of clothing, we have found that most of our concerns that are related to clothing are actually more related to the upstream textiles manufacturing processes and complex supply chains, and we simply don't yet know enough to recommend a relevant product category. And so we're going to continue looking at these plans. We may revisit them in a future work plan. I'm now going to discuss the product categories that we propose for our new work plan. And the first two I want to talk about are two that were in the old work plan. We're carrying them over, and we're not changing the names at all. They are beauty, personal care and hygiene products, and cleaning products. In the work plan itself, we have revised the product category descriptions for these two in the interest of hopefully promoting better clarity. And to revise those descriptions, we relied on existing laws and other authoritative bodies. And so, for example, this past year, the California legislature passed the Cleaning Products Right to Know Act, and in that law defined cleaning products. So we decided to adopt that definition for this category. Similarly, for the beauty, personal care, and hygiene products category, the FDA has some product category description or some product descriptions that we borrowed from in helping to clarify the description for this category. Okay, we do not, however, believe that the revisions we made to these product category descriptions actually changed the scope of the categories. In essence, they're exactly as they were in the previous work plan. Okay, the other three categories that we intend to keep and carry over from the old work plan are shown here. In these cases, we not only propose changing the product category names, but also the product category descriptions, and there would be a corresponding change in the scope of the product category. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time focusing on these in some detail. Okay, in the case of furnishings, in the old work plan, this category was called the household, office furniture, and furnishings category, and we propose changing this name as shown here. You'd note that we added the term school and decor to the name of this product category. The term decor is meant to clarify that some products that we might not typically think about falling into this category actually are included. Examples might be throw rugs or curtains. And we're adding schools to this category because children spend the majority of their time indoors in settings that include school classrooms. And we felt that the name for the old category created a gap in our coverage that would not allow us to address all of those indoor environments where many children may spend the majority of their time. Okay, another reason that we're proposing changing the name of this product category that I wanted to point out is in the old work plan, we kind of relied on the global product classification system. But in our work implementing that plan, we found that that wasn't really the most ideal model for naming this category because a lot of the products that we think about as falling into this category aren't even in that system yet. So we decided to move away from it. Okay, and then finally, we proposed changing the scope of this category. In the old work plan, this category restricted us to looking only at products treated with flame retardants or stain-resistant chemicals. In looking at this product category during our implementation of the old work plan, we became aware of potential exposure to other chemicals in the indoor environment, and we wanted opportunities to take a closer look at those chemicals. In the case of the building products category, in the old work plan, that's what this category was named, building products. And in our new work plan, we're proposing changing the name as shown here. Again, we're proposing revising the name of this category to hopefully provide more clarity. We also propose removing the restriction that we focus only on products that are paints, adhesives, ceilings, or flooring. We're proposing this change of scope because there is a tremendous amount of effort in this sector in terms of looking for greener alternatives, and we want to explore what we can do to encourage the development and use of safer alternatives in a wider variety of these products. In the case of office supplies, in the old work plan, we focused on consumables for office machinery, and we learned that that really wasn't the most ideal name because we wanted to focus on more than just things that are used in office machinery. And so we proposed changing the name of this work plan, as shown here, of this product category, excuse me, as shown here, to include consumable office, school, and business supplies. Again, we put the word school in here because we believe many of these materials that are used in office settings may also be used in school classrooms. We received a lot of recommendations during our public comment period that we had last fall to look at products in this category. And the old name, another reason for changing this is because the old name simply didn't readily capture all the things that were being recommended to us or requested from us. Okay, and finally, I'm gonna talk about two new categories that weren't in the old work plan. They would be entirely new categories. And they are food packaging and lead acid batteries. In the case of food packaging, we've received a lot of comment over the years regarding food packaging and requests to look at it. And in fact, in 2016, we received a petition to address bisphenol A in food can linings. And while we were unable to grant that petition, in looking at it, we became aware of many potential exposures to different kinds of chemicals from food packaging. And there also has been recent talk of legislative action to address perfluoroalkyl substances in food packaging. And so based on consideration of all those factors and the recommendations we received, we decided to propose including this category in our work plan. Lead acid batteries is kind of an interesting category because we were actually compelled to add that to our old work plan by both the governor and the legislature. And in fact, we started working on this category last year. We held a workshop. We've done a tremendous amount of work on the category, but we haven't yet finished. And so that's the reason that we're carrying this product category over into the new work plan. So that pretty much concludes the overview that I wanted to provide. In closing, I want to say again, thank you for coming. We're looking forward to hearing from you all. And we would like your input definitely on the new work plan. A public comment period, just as a reminder, is open on our CalSafer website until March 9th, and the website is given here, where you can both access the draft work plan and submit comments. I've also provided my contact information here. Should you have any clarifying questions, would like to contact me later, I'd be happy to try to answer them. I would ask that you please use the CalSafer website to provide your public comment and don't send them to me. It's much easier and it enables you to also protect confidential information should you choose to do so. So it'll be a better way for you to provide comment. And lastly, I just want to say that in implementing our last work plan, we learned an awful lot, and we relied on many of those lessons learned in developing this one. And we will continue to apply those lessons learned as we move forward to adopt and implement this work plan. And we are eager to engage in dialogue with you. So thank you very much. Just a couple of other housekeeping things. We're going to turn the podium around and folks are going to be invited up to give their comments. Carl and I will be up here to answer questions. We all need live mics so the webinar folks can hear us. And so Diana, you have the comment cards. So she'll call you up in the order in which you submitted your comment card to her.
Thank you, Rob. While Rob does that, Diana, maybe you can give this to me. Thank you. First, I'm going to start with one of the clarifying questions we got online, and then we'll go directly into our cards that we've received here. So we received a question from the webinar that says, how do the changes in the previous work plan product categories impact the potential regulatory timeline? So that question, essentially the changes in the priority product work plan are just changes to the menu of categories that we're looking at. The regulatory timeframe is the same, regardless of what's in the work plan, in that we look at those categories, and our basic process is that within those categories, we collect information from all of you, we go out and collect information ourselves, then we propose a potential chemical product combination or priority product. And once we do that, we do more work. We put that out to the public. We put out a draft profile. We have a workshop on that. We solicit comments on that. That is all pre-regulatory work that we do before we enter into a formal rulemaking process to adopt a specific priority product. So the changes in the work plan categories don't actually affect the regulatory timeframe at all. They just change the menu from which we're looking at as we go forward. The next one I got from online says, as you look at the various food package candidate chemicals, how you take a broad look that could look at things like BPA and PFAS that have slightly different uses. I'll start with that, and then maybe Rob can chime in. Again, the category is for a consumer product, and our candidate chemical list is independently out there. There are a lot of chemicals on that list. And unless we specify otherwise, every chemical on that list is on the menu, if you will, of things that we could look at in that category. So when we're looking at food packaging, for example, everything that's on our candidate chemical list is something that we could potentially look at as a combination packaging product and chemical. And then we could research that, and we could ask for input, and we could ultimately pick a priority product from a wide number of chemicals and different types of packaging. This is one of the reasons it's so important to get input, because our candidate chemical list is large. There's a lot of specific products within each of these categories, so we want to get information on where it makes sense for us to focus. I think that answers that question. Okay. And so now I'm going to call up folks that have put in a card. Our first one is from Randall Friedman from the Navy Region Southwest. Okay, well, welcome.
Good morning. We have been active participants in this process and have submitted written comments. Just want to summarize, we have a very specialized use of methylene chloride. We're an end user, we're not a manufacturer. We're at the mercy of the manufacturer on whether or not they prepare it. We continue to have concerns about the process and have made suggestions about using an abridged alternative analysis, or recognizing what the EU has done in terms of the difference between a consumer product and something that's used only in a specialized industrial setting with industrial hygiene, with very controlled conditions and a lack of an exposure pathway to the public. So we continue just to want to emphasize, we have a robust research program. It's our goal to find alternatives, but for these specialized uses, there's continue to be none. There's a clear record of that, and we again just want to emphasize how critical it is that your process recognize this use and accommodate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Friedman. Again, our primary point today is to get your input and not to debate anything, but to clarify. But I would just take a moment, Mr. Friedman, to note that, we closed the comment period on our methylene chloride regulations, and we're evaluating where to from there. But one important point I think that people should understand in the process is that once we designate a priority product, at that point, the alternatives analysis process is designed to accommodate all those potential uses and impacts throughout the life cycle, whether it's from the Navy or some other endpoint. But we appreciate your input and engagement. Next, Catherine Porter from the California Healthy Nail Salon Collaborative.
Good morning. I'm the Policy Director, Catherine Porter, with the California Healthy Nail Salon Collaborative. We're a group of about 35 organizations throughout California that focus on ensuring the safety, health, and rights of the nail salon community in California. which is predominantly an immigrant community, predominantly non-native English speakers, predominantly women of reproductive age. So this is a group of workers who are especially vulnerable to the exposures to toxic chemicals that they experience at work every day. I'd like to reiterate a couple of things that we have voiced before, and that is urging the Safer Consumer Products Program, when it looks at personal care products, to not target individual chemicals, but to make sure it targets groups of chemicals which behave similarly, so like plasticizers, resins, or solvents. We also want to repeat, we were here, as many of the rest of us were, about a year ago at the Personal Care Products, or specifically Nail Salon Products Workshop, and many industry representatives indicated that all of their products had already been substantiated and were substantiated to be safe. And so we urge DTSC to call on industry to show them the facts, show them the evidence, show them the studies that seem to prove that their products are safe. We reviewed the draft work plan and noticed that there's very little reference to workers and their unique exposures or level of exposures. Nail salon workers, for example, often work 6 days a week, maybe 8 to 10 hours a week. Many of them, as I said, are women of reproductive age. And so when these, in previous venues, there has been great support for ensuring that the unique place of workers is reflected in the Safer Consumer Products Program and in the choices it makes. And so we hope that maybe the draft work plan can reinsert the emphasis on workers. We also hope that in the future, Safer Consumer Products Program can put some information on its website that is more consumer-friendly, more layperson-friendly, to explain what this program is about and consider language access issues. Again, the nail salon community is predominantly Vietnamese speaking, so including information that's in Vietnamese, that's in Spanish, Korean, and some of other of the more major languages in California would be a good step toward ensuring language access, which is actually sort of the rule, the general rule in California, that there should be language access to agency programs. We then would just be interested in hearing, there's probably you don't have an answer to this, but what the timeline might be for moving ahead on naming the product and chemical category for personal care products. And also I want to note that even though nail salon products were discussed previously, there was no mention of nail products in the draft work plan. And so we're concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Let me just take a moment to clarify a couple of things and information points. One, the timeline. We hope to finalize this work plan by April or early April, so moving and then move into the next 3-year period. And note that we have a variety of products that are already in the pipeline, including looking at some nail products, and stay tuned for that. I also wanted to just highlight something that's not directly related, but related to what Catherine was alluding to, is the department was tasked by the legislature under AB 2125 to produce guidelines for healthy nail salon recognition programs that could be adopted by local government agencies in California. We're pretty much done with that. We're getting ready to release that, and then we'll be working with local governments throughout California to provide that information for them and to translate a variety of those best practices materials that will be available to salons and to local government agencies that can then start implementing those programs. So I just wanted to note that. Our next commenter is Tim Shestak from the American Chemistry Council.
Thanks, Carl. Tim Shestak with the American Chemistry Council. Just a couple of brief comments. We are putting together written comments from broader ACC. I know a number of our individual chemical panels also be submitting comments directly related to some of the chemistries that are mentioned in the work plan. I just did want to highlight one aspect of the plan on page 20, section 4.0, implementation of the plan. There's some comments about, and some language included there in terms of, I'll characterize them as some disclaimer language about what it means or what it does not mean to be listed in the work plan. Specifically that the identification of a product category is not meant to imply that the department has made any determinations about the safety of those particular products or chemistries. We would suggest that be more prominently highlighted in the work plan at the front end instead of in the back. It's important for what the department says and doesn't say in terms of public's interpretation of the documents and the provisions of the work plan. And it could significantly have some impacts on the market. We've seen that in prior years on the identification of some chemical product combinations. So we would just urge the department to be cautious in how it presents this information, and would encourage you to highlight that more prominently at the front end instead of in the back. So appreciate the opportunity to make the comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I have a couple of questions, comments from online. First from Andre Ventura. To clarify my question about food packaging, public interest groups have worked on a variety of chemical issues, some on BPA, some on PFAS, others on styrene. How do we avoid addressing one group of related chemicals getting into food and not the others? So a little bit of background on the structure of our regulations is when we pick a priority product, we're required to name a specific product and a specific chemical or chemicals in combination. We're not necessarily limited to the number of chemicals or number of products. I think the question is trying to get at how do we make sure we don't leave something out that's important as well. There's nothing to prevent us from naming more than one product other than the capacity to have the bandwidth at staff to do all the work and to go through the rulemaking process. But that's one of the things that's important is that we consider in balancing our discretion is what makes the most sense. We don't pick a product lightly. We want to pick products that are going to have a meaningful impact to protect people in the environment. So I would encourage you, if you have input, specifically in this case or others, where you have some thoughts about in that category of food packaging, what might be the most important chemicals to capture and why, and how are they related to other chemicals? Are there relationships that might be something we should consider when we're picking a product? Because as you all know, there's a lot of complex relationships in the marketplace that may be related to us picking one particular chemical and product. Classes of chemicals, we have some classes of chemicals on our list, but most are not. So if there are chemicals that you feel should be looked at in concert because they have similar characteristics of impact in the environment or on people, and why, that would be helpful, as well as specific products. So again, we're relying on folks to give us good input about how to answer some of these questions, and it's a good question. So thank you. Rob, anything to add on that? Okay. Next, we have a question or a comment. Why burden CalSafer with Cal-OSHA jurisdictions when these nail salon products could seek help there in Cal-OSHA? Okay, well, this is an opportunity to talk a little bit about how our framework differs from other similar regulatory frameworks in California and how it's similar. So a key concept in our framework is that we look at the impact of these chemical product combinations throughout their entire life cycle, from the time when we extract the chemical or make the chemical or extract the product, the substances to make the product, to its manufacture, its effect on workers in the manufacture, its packaging, its transport, its use, its ultimate end of life. So across that spectrum, many products might enter or not enter a specific regulatory framework. So Cal-OSHA, for example, our counterparts there, focus on the work environment solely. And that is only for workers that do not include, say, a sole proprietor. So every regulatory agency has certain authorities and perspective where they have jurisdiction and interest. And it is not our intent to overlap and conflict with any other regulatory body, state or federal, but rather to look at where there might be opportunities to look at, say, workers that are not covered by Cal OSHA, or products that are not covered adequately by other regulatory bodies, whether that's Cal OSHA, our counterparts here within Cal EPA, or other state and federal organizations. So because of the breadth and depth of our program, we're always looking for that space where it can be meaningful and where there's a problem that we can address, but we're not looking to conflict with any existing regulatory agency or program. Next, we have a card for Nancy Biermeyer from the Breast Cancer Prevention Partners.
I'm still practicing that new name myself. Good morning, and let me start by saying thank you to the staff for preparing this document, for giving us the opportunity to comment, and for all the work that you've done over the years. Breast Cancer Prevention Partners is a national organization focused on preventing breast cancer by getting chemicals linked to the disease out of the environment, including consumer products. And we've done a lot of work on cleaning products and personal care products and food packaging. So not surprisingly, that's what I'd like to talk about. So I want to start by saying we strongly support the inclusion of cleaning products in this plan. We were a part of passing SB 258, which hopefully will provide you with more information about what's in cleaning products, so you can make informed choices about what are the best combinations and what can be most impactful based on the breadth of the use of a particular chemical. We also strongly support the continued inclusion of beauty, personal care, and hygiene products. I want to associate myself with the comments of my colleague, Catherine Porter, and on the importance of doing those nail products. And there are lots of other chemical product combinations out there that we will continue to talk with you about going forward. And the Safe Cosmetics program, which we're also very strongly supportive of, also contains some of that information that can show you the most ubiquitously used problematic chemical in the products, so that we can use your limited resources as efficiently as possible. I want to just make a quick comment about workers related to both of those categories. I also want to associate myself with the comments of Catherine Porter around the importance of including workers. And to the last point that was made about OSHA, a number of the workers that we've been associated with, particularly around cleaning products, are not covered by OSHA at all. So domestic workers who use these products every day, all day, the cleaning products in particular, are not covered by any OSHA regulations. So it's really important that we include the impacts on their health and how we're looking at these products. And finally, I just want to make a quick comment about food packaging. We had encouraged the program to include food packaging in the last work plan, so we're very excited to see it in this one. There certainly has been a lot of focus on the PFAS chemicals, both in the legislature and frankly around the country generally, because of the concerns about particularly drinking water, but also their persistence in the environment. And I think to do those one at a time would be a great disservice. I think they need to be dealt with as a class. We have seen lots of problems with companies taking, say, PFOA out, but putting in another product or another chemical that looks very much like it and acts very much like it. And there's a lot of discussion about long chain versus short chain. And, you know, as the evidence is coming out, the short chains are showing up to be problematic as well, if not as problematic, certainly problematic. And given their persistence in the environment, it's really important to get ahead of those chemicals. And then finally, a chemical that we have been concerned about for a very, very long time is bisphenol A. And we would love to continue to, we'll continue to encourage the program to look at that as an important chemical and to look at it more broadly than just BPA, but look at all of the bisphenols, for instance, so that you get BPS and BPF, other chemicals that as more data comes out are also problematic, also look estrogenic. Again, so that when we do the alternatives, you know, you'll look at BPS and the alternative analysis, I'm sure, but to group them together so that we can get outside of the bisphenol category to see if we can find some chemicals that are truly safer would be, I think, an important step forward. And the program is particularly well suited to address things like BPA that have been problematic to replace. So we would encourage you to strongly encourage you to take a look at that and, again, look at those as a class, as my colleague Andrea Ventura mentioned in her comment. So, and finally, I would just say, like, let's move forward. Let's get moving as quickly as we can on some of these. I know on the last work plan, there was a goal of doing 3 to 5 product chemical combinations per year, and I don't think that mark was hit, and we're hoping that as we work out the kinks, this can move forward more quickly. And if there are things we as a community can do to facilitate that, we would be more than happy to have that conversation. So again, thank you to all of the program staff for all the work you've done. We were part of creating this program in the beginning with a number of folks in this room, and we are excited, continue to be excited about the potential to really move this forward and get a few more of these through the pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have a question comment from online. Maybe this is under Nancy's let's just get going category. This is from Michael Hoffman. Just to clarify, the last 3 years was developing the product categories, but no specific chemicals or chemical combinations have been identified, correct? Starting in April, the next 3 years, we'll be looking for specific chemicals and chemical combinations. Well, let me clarify. Not correct. We actually have already adopted in rule 1 priority product, and 2 are also in process. And the first one we adopted was for children's sleep products that contain foam with a couple of flame retardants in them. When we adopted, the way the process works is we adopt in rulemaking a specific priority product, at which point the clock starts for the manufacturers to either do an alternatives analysis to evaluate safer alternatives on how they might make that product, or they can remove the chemical from the product, or they can remove the product from the market, essentially. In the case of the children's sleep products, the manufacturers found that there were foams that don't contain flame retardants, and they notified us that they've moved away from those. We, just to clarify, we're also looking at those products now because we're going to go out and do some sampling and analysis to verify that, in fact, that those actions were taken, that those flame retardants are not in those priority products. Subsequently, we have gone through rulemaking for the spray polyurethane foam systems, which are systems used by contractors to apply insulation for homes and buildings and other products, as well as roofing. Our concern there were isocyanates in that product. We closed the comment period on that, and we're moving forward to adopting those in regulation so that this summer the clock will start on the alternatives analysis process for that product. And we just recently closed our comment period on methylene chloride in paint strippers, which is the 3rd priority product that we're looking at. Concurrently, from the last work plan, from the 2015-2017 work plan, we, in the last year and a half, have had a variety of workshops and webinars and meetings to discuss things that are also in the pipeline to be designated as a priority product. And those things right now, we're looking at PFAS chemicals in carpets and rugs. We're looking at various nail products, and we're looking at various surfactants in some commercial products that we're still refining before we come out with a final proposal. And I'll note shortly on some of the opportunities that you'll have to give us input on those processes. But the main point is this is a cycle that goes on continuously, which is we have a 3-year work plan. We look at categories. We start researching those categories, identifying specific potential priority products. We go out and ask for more information. We put out information on our findings, and we refine that until we select that product and go through rulemaking to put it in the process to start the alternatives analysis process. That process will continue. It's continuing from the last work plan. We've incorporated some of that work into this current work plan, and it will keep every 3 years going, and we'll keep adding additional priority products as we go. We are getting better at it. This is a new program, and I'll just note that with many of your help, we've had a lot of input on the technical documents we produce. and going through the process, we are getting better at it and learning. And I think it is important to note that the strength of the program is about the transparent availability of good information and good analysis, and that's why we appreciate all your input. So we do have another one coming online. I'll just, we have plenty of time allotted. I would just encourage anyone in the audience here, if they'd like to make a comment or ask a question, fill out a card, and we'll have time while we answer the next question. Okay, the next one from online, from Yoko Perez. I understand that thermal paper and azo dyes have been removed from the consumable office, school, and business supplies in the draft 2018-2020 priority product work plan. Does this mean that thermal paper and azo dyes are no longer in the scope? I think, and Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, we did not specify in that we were removing anything from consideration in that category. Is that correct?
That is correct, Carl. We haven't removed anything from consideration. We made an active attempt to not name specific products because we haven't done the prioritization work yet throughout the work plan, but those items that are described there are within the scope of that category and could be considered if we wanted to do so.
Yeah, so in general, the categories that we define include all of the candidate chemicals on our list. So we're not looking to eliminate things off the bat necessarily. What we want is input on what we think we should focus on. So, so in this case, for example, if someone believes that thermal paper and azo dyes are something we should focus on, we would encourage you to give us information that would support that concern. We're fairly aware of a lot of work in the thermal paper area, and we know that azo dyes have certain challenges with them as well, but certainly we would encourage you to give us more information. I think it's fair to say that one of the challenges we had with the last work plan is that we gave a lot of examples, and some folks assumed that we were going to name that example and not another one. And it was a balancing of, we were trying to give examples to demonstrate there are things in that category that are commonly known that may be an issue, but they're not necessarily things we're going to pick. So I guess I would encourage you not to make assumptions about what we are or are not going to pick in the category, but to use the information that you have available from your perspective of what you think we need to know about what we should look at or not. And that's very helpful. That's what we're looking for. We have another comment from online from Nadia Calvo. When talking about office consumables, is the DTSC referring to ink and toner contained in the cartridges or the cartridges outside container too?
I don't think that's a question we can answer at this time. I think we'd have to do the research and take a look at what the product was and define it in the context of what our research reveals about it. And so it's too early to say something like that, although both the ink and toner as well as the cartridges themselves may be something that we would consider.
And I would add that one of the things we tried to do by pointing out some of our priorities in the work plan is to focus in on why we might be concerned about some of these things. So exposure being a key aspect of the whole equation, when you look at any particular product, you may have certain chemicals that are on our list. Some of those chemicals may be of much greater concern because the exposure pathway is much more obvious and more significant than another one. But that's not to say that there isn't a legitimate concern about another chemical as well. So again, part of our education process is getting that information and analyzing it before we make a decision. Okay, well, we don't have any other questions online. I don't see cards in the audience, so I'm going to take a brief moment while you're contemplating if you have another comment to do a little bit of advertising for upcoming work. I want to just let you know that we have a lot going on these days and some things you might be interested in. So next Monday, a week from today, we're hosting a webinar called Monetizing Impacts to Public Health, a case study of select air pollutants by the US EPA. You may be aware that our regulations, when you're doing an alternatives analysis, there's a segment in there that requires the practitioner to evaluate some public health impacts and to monetize those impacts. This is an interesting area, and it's a new area for many folks. And so we've invited Dr. Ali Kamal from US EPA to come talk about some of his experience looking in the air area of monetizing impacts. This is not to say this is going to be a workshop that tells you exactly how to do it in our regulatory framework, but we think that it's going to give you some insight as to how one approach for one constituent in one media works that might be applied when you're looking at the requirements in our framework. So that's going to be next Monday at 9 o'clock, and you can go on our website and register for that webinar. Additionally, on March 7th, we are going to have a workshop and a webcast on perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances in carpets and rugs. This is, we recently put out a technical document that's fairly extensive. I encourage you to look at, that's looking at our next proposed priority product. And there's a lot of information in there, and we'll be presenting that, going over that at this workshop, and having people have an opportunity to give us impact as well. That also has a comment period that you can give us comments on CalSafer if you are interested. So those are just two of the things going on as we speak. So I will at this time ask if there's anyone in the audience who would like to make a comment or ask a clarifying question. No? Anything online? Okay, well, with that, we are going to close this webinar workshop. I want to encourage you all to submit your comments. Again, the comment period closes on the 9th, and you can go online, submit documents, give us direct comments on CalSafer. You can see what other folks have submitted as well. And we also encourage you to come to our other workshops and webinars coming up. And we really appreciate your input. It's important for us to get that good information to help us make good decisions moving forward. So thank you very much.